Hi Year 9. Today's lesson is just a set of photo challenges, so watch this video, take note of the challenges and just get shooting and have fun. So our aims for today's lesson is to recall all those key elements that we've learned during our smartphone photography project. So I really want you to remember everything we've already covered and apply that today, because we're going to create a set of 4 images in response to 4 different themes. So let's recap on everything we've covered so far, because we've covered quite a lot over the last few lessons. First off, we've got those fundamental elements of photography which we done right at the start of the project. So I want you to consider today the camera functions you use. Are you using the best function to take that particular photograph? Maybe you need to change. Consider the composition, the lighting, camera position, angles and background colour. Now these are all factors which you should be thinking about naturally now as you pick the camera up. You're thinking about how the elements you are photographing are going to fill the frame up, and you want to make everything work well together as a set within the frame. So you are in control of all these factors. Make sure you're thinking about each and every one of them. If the background's a bit cluttered, can you tidy it up? Or if there's a colour which is clashing, can you take it out? Or can you put a colour in to make it work better? Think about all these things, because they will work together to make your outcome the best it can be. And then secondly, we've got the creative shooting styles in which we considered later on in the project. So while you set up your photograph, have a think about how you can shoot in a different style to give it a bit more of an eye-catching and successful final outcome. So things you could think of during creative shooting are leading lines, framing, shadows, pattern, symmetry, and then even after photographing, maybe you can edit the photo further. You can use Photopea. Some of you are getting quite comfortable with that now. Or even if you're editing it on your phone, if you're enhancing these factors you've already captured, you're going to just really make that photo a little bit more successful. So just as a reminder, ways you can do this is by levels, contrast, sharpening. There's loads you can do to edit it. But also think about what you can do before shooting the photo. You want to, while editing, you want to enhance what you've already captured, not create something which isn't there. So think about it before, because it will help you during the editing process as well. So I've already mentioned there's going to be themes for today's photo challenges. So over the next few slides, I'm going to introduce to you 4 different themes, and I want 4 final images which you've shot to represent these themes. So let's take a look at them. So there's no rules as such for today's lesson, just themes. And these themes are totally open to your interpretation. So they can be portraits, landscape, documentary, they can be still life, they can be whatever style of photo you want to be. You might want to try and recreate that a day in the life of lesson, as long as you're using the themes to recreate your images. So our first theme is minimalist. So there's a few examples on the page now that show what I mean by minimalist. I want you to show not very much information in the frame at all. Now these images are quite bland in sense of colour. You can include colour. I just want you to show not much in terms of subject. So as you can see in the first image, all that's shown there is a shadow, which is really creative and quite thought-provoking, because it makes you think of what's not shown in the frame. Obviously you can see there's a plant nearby, but you can't see it actually in the shot, which is a really thought-provoking sort of way of shooting. And again, in the second photo, you can only see a hand, so it makes you think about what is not in the frame. And the last 2 images, again, are really good examples of minimal information within the frame. So have a think, how can you shoot something in a real minimal style? Can you show something that's outside of the frame without actually seeing it? Can you use shadows or just a real small selection of something in the frame? So that's all I'm giving you for minimalist. Be creative and have fun with that. For our second theme, I've gone for looking through. Now all this is thinking about how you're going to shoot and I want you to try and look through something with the camera. So again, there's a few examples on the screen. You can use window frames, bubbles, or even small, that's a lens cap in the first image there. So have a think about what you can include where you can look through it. A really good idea for this is to look on sources like Instagram and Pinterest. They should really get some ideas flowing for you there. But again, I just want you to be really creative. It's wide open for interpretation, so you do with it what you want to do with this theme, as long as you're looking through something. Okay, so theme number 3. I've got 2 slides for this one because, again, it's open to interpretation. So, monochrome. When you think of monochrome, you might think black and white, but it's not necessarily just black and white, as long as all the colours within the frame are the same colour. You can have different tones in there, so this task is all about tones. I want you to think about how you can show something and make the most of it with the tones in the frame. So if you want to use black and white, by all means use black and white. There's some lovely examples here. Maybe you want to focus on nature and really focus on the tones. When you take away the colour from nature, it is all about the tones. As you can see in the second image, there's a really strong brightness and contrast there, which works quite well. Or you might want to make a timeless effect looking image, like the first one with the bike leaned against the wall. It gives it a sort of classical feel, that nice and natural. I think black and white also works well for like structural photography. So you can see on the last image there, there's a lot of patterns happening, a lot of black space, empty space. Again, this is really thought-provoking. It makes you think, what's there? What can't I see? A good question raises more questions. A good photo, raises more questions than it answers. So here are your black and white examples for monochrome. Or you might want to go the opposite way with this theme of monochrome and include lots of colour, as long as all the colour in the frame is the same. So some really strong examples here, focusing on obviously blue, yellow, red and green. So how can you fill the entire frame with all the same colour? I'll leave that up to you. You can either do a fruit. Fruit is a really good one. If you cut fruit in half, something like an orange, you can fill the entire frame with just orange. You can do a really close-up shot, and that adds a really nice effect. Again, look on Pinterest because there are so many examples of these types of photos. Go wild with this one. It can be a lot of fun if you choose this one or black and white. It's up to you. Okay, so our final theme is one of my favourites. It's looking at reflection within photography. So some really good examples on the page now. I want you to find a reflection and photograph the reflection. So some really good examples of this, worktops. If you've got shiny worktops, how can you photograph that? You might want to turn your camera upside down, so the reflection is the actual image. That could be quite cool to play around with. You've got glasses, quite a really well-used one. Cars are really good for reflections, not just the windows, but also the body as well, because you get a sort of warped feeling within the reflection. So that could be really cool to play around with. But my favourite for this one is the CD portrait. I think it's really cool and quite suggestive because you don't actually see the face, but you see elements of the body, which is quite similar to Hockney style we've just looked at. So that could be, I don't know if you'd have any CDs available now, but if you do, that could be a fun one to play around with. So for your last theme, reflections. See what you can come up with for that. So by the end of today's lesson, I want us all to be able to say, I have created 4 images that use the themes set in today's lesson. Nice and easy. I've considered the key elements of photography and experimented with some creative shooting styles. So that's an important one to develop your work even further. And to push your work even further still, you can say, I've also edited my images to enhance the elements already captured within my photography. And lastly, I have provided annotated notes for each photo to describe my photographing and editing processes and reflections on my work. So don't forget that last part, because it is really important and it does help explain the thoughts and the processes that you've gone through, because a photo doesn't quite capture that. Even though you might be thinking it, the examiner doesn't know that. So annotate it and make sure everyone else knows. So this is the last lesson in the photography project. I hope you've enjoyed it. Your work has been really great and I've seen it develop throughout the lesson. So well done to everyone who's contributed. And I hope you enjoyed the last photo challenge lesson.